My bootstraps broke. A simple, comprehensive, effective, and affordable plan to help house the homeless. Synopsis. There are over 500,000 lost homeless souls wandering the streets of this country who are being neglected and basically just ignored. This book was written in the hope of addressing this crisis head-on. It presents a comprehensive, affordable, creative, and very credible plan that will help to house many hundreds of thousands of homeless individuals, primarily those who are chronically homeless and who have been living on the streets for far too long. This synopsis provides a simple and brief outline of this homeless housing plan. The reader is encouraged to explore this book more in depth to get a more extensive and detailed understanding of what is being proposed. This book details how we can affordably house a vast number of our homeless neighbors. This book presents a plan, a dream of sorts. It presents a vision and perhaps an answer to help the homeless regain their hope, dignity, and their self-respect. The American dream should not be reserved for just the lucky few. It should be available to everyone who is lucky enough to live in this great nation. This plan is basically quite simple. It calls for leasing a commercial warehouse building, which will be converted into a homeless housing complex. Inside this building will be 80 individual sleeping units. These sleeping units are based on what are known as Japanese Businessmen Hotel suites. These suites, or sleeping units, will provide the homeless with a private, peaceful place that they can call home. Inside of each of the sleeping units, there will be a small television and an AM/FM radio so that the residents can stay informed of the local news and current weather reports. There will also be a personal storage locker for each resident so that they will be able to store their personal belongings. There will be a small library available to the residents so that they can keep their minds sharp. Computers and the internet will also be made available so that the residents can do job searches, have access to email and social media. They will also have a mailbox with a permanent address where they will be able to receive their mail. This housing complex will also be equipped with showers and bathroom facilities. It will also have a commercial kitchen along with a full complement of staff to assist the residents. There will be a chef, a food preparation specialist, and a kitchen assistant who will work together to create 3 nutritious meals for the residents each day, 7 days a week. There will also be a full array of services available to these residents. Among these services will be medical and mental health care. There will also be a psychiatrist who will be able to evaluate and treat the residents and prescribe any needed medications. There will be psychological counseling services available, which will include both individual counseling and group therapy. There will be Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meetings available each day and evening. A variety of drug and alcohol rehabilitative services will also be provided. There will also be security on site 24/7. This will help keep the residents safe and ensure a peaceful environment. A janitor will also be on hand who will make the complex as clean and livable as possible. Residents will also have an opportunity to train for a variety of jobs. There will be 30 to 40 positions available at the complex for the residents. They'll be thoroughly trained so that they'll be able to work as a member of the kitchen staff or perhaps even become a chef. They may also receive the necessary training to become one of the complex's security agents, work as a janitor, perhaps a member of the laundry staff. These are just a few of the ideas that are presented in this book. I encourage you to read the rest of this entire manuscript and get a fuller picture of what this concept entails and see what it offers to the 500,000 homeless and see what it offers our society. Chapter 1, A Place to Call Home, an affordable plan to help house our nation's homeless. Introduction. Human garbage. To many, the homeless are nothing more than a nuisance or an eyesore, people to be judged or looked down upon. Some people may even consider the homeless as nothing more than society's trash, as so much rubbish that needs to be thrown away. Some may even consider them to be less than human. The homeless are often seen as lazy, good for nothing, as society's rejects, people to be ridiculed, laughed at, or simply ignored. What does it say about our society when our pets are treated with greater dignity and more respect than our homeless neighbors? Even abandoned and stray animals are provided with medical care, food, and even a temporary home. It appears we value an animal's life more than we do a homeless person. How can a human being's life be worth less than a stray animal? Even this nation's prisoners are treated more humanely than homeless people. We provide our criminals with a place to live, 3 meals a day, clean clothes, and even the opportunity to take a hot shower. They also receive medical care and mental health services. It's not easy being homeless. One must learn to cope with being outside in the bitter cold, in frequent rainstorms, freezing snow and hail, not to mention the unrelenting, blistering heat of the noonday sun. Being homeless can also put one's life at risk. While sleeping on the streets, there's a very real threat of being robbed, physically attacked, or even killed. One must remain ever vigilant for potential predators. This often means sleeping with one eye open. The homeless are constantly worried, wondering when the next robbery or violent attack will take place. No one should have to live like this, yet over 500,000 people do. It is ironic and quite tragic that here in America, in the world's wealthiest country, there are hundreds of thousands of homeless individuals struggling just to survive. The United States, a compassionate country. Traditionally, this country has always cared for its less fortunate. It has always gone out of its way to help those who are most in need. We have always been an extremely generous people. We have demonstrated this by spending significant amounts of tax money on programs designed to help those who are going through deep financial hardships and struggling to merely survive. As a nation, we have never turned our backs on our fellow man, especially in times of crisis. Homelessness has now become just such a crisis. Homelessness has grown steadily over the years and has become a very serious problem. It has reached epidemic proportions. The time has come for all of us to come together to do something to help these homeless men, women, and children. The homeless find themselves in dire straits and are in serious need of assistance. Of course, money will be needed to help address this crisis, but money alone is not the answer. We must also be willing to offer the homeless some genuine compassion and show them that we care for them. We must act soon before it's too late. We must apply intense pressure on our political leaders to force them to take the bold steps necessary to address this very serious, ongoing, and unrelenting humanitarian crisis. We need the political will and leadership to address this human tragedy head-on, so that together we may overcome the negative, uncaring attitude that is so often expressed toward those experiencing homelessness. It requires all of us working together to find creative, sensible, and innovative solutions to help address this very serious problem. Some of our political leaders have slowly begun the process of building emergency shelters to house a small segment of the homeless population. The problem is that emergency shelters are not going to solve this dire situation. Many homeless people would rather take their chances living on the street than stay in an emergency shelter because they tend to be overcrowded, very dangerous, and extremely unsanitary. They are not the kind of place we would keep a pet, let alone a human being. Homelessness, no easy solutions. Homelessness, a political perspective. Homelessness is a very complex problem, and there are no easy or simple solutions. Homelessness involves a wide array of political, social, and economic challenges, each of which needs to be addressed before we begin to look for any real solutions to it. Homelessness is not a sexy political issue. To make matters worse, there are not too many politicians who really care about this problem or are willing to do anything meaningful to help these people. The homeless are usually not the type who will stand up and raise their voices and demand to be heard. Instead, they will often just remain silent while they're overlooked and ignored by the elected officials. The homeless have very little, if any, political power or political clout because most homeless people are either unable or unwilling to vote. Incidentally, you need to have a permanent address in order to vote, something most homeless people lack. For the most part, it seems as though most of our elected representatives feel that they do not have to look after the interests of the homeless. This results in the homeless being forgotten, overlooked, neglected, or just ignored outright. Homelessness has been considered more of a nuisance than a real problem that needs to be addressed. The usual response to homelessness from city officials is to have the police ticket them for camping without a permit or intimidate them until they choose to leave the city and take up residence elsewhere. Recently, the number of homeless has grown dramatically. The homeless have now become much more visible, which means that more and more people are becoming aware of their dire situation. We see the homeless sleeping on freeway overpasses, in city streets, in parks, behind dumpsters, and just about any place they can find to rest their heads. They have become a very real part of our everyday life. Unfortunately, some people remain in a state of denial, ignoring the fact that there are masses of homeless people sleeping on their streets. Politicians are beginning to hear more complaints about the homeless from their constituents. These elected officials have begun to search for relatively inexpensive and fairly easy ways to fix the problem. Unfortunately, they are discovering that there are no quick, easy, or cheap solutions to this crisis. Finding a real solution to homelessness will take more than just building temporary shelters and, quite frankly, more than just the same old tired ideas that have never really done much to help solve the problem. Officials at the local, state, and federal level need to do some very serious soul searching. Then they need to decide whether they are willing to do all that is necessary to sincerely address this issue. They must decide if they will address this crisis head on and try to find realistic, workable, and economically feasible solutions to it. Homelessness from a sociological perspective. Homelessness is having a negative impact on our society. We must decide if we are willing to do something to rectify this humanitarian crisis or just continue to look the other way and hope that this horrific problem will somehow just magically disappear. Most homeless people are not foreigners from some faraway land. Most of them, the vast majority, are American citizens. These homeless individuals live among us in our communities, and whether you like it or not, they are our neighbors. We live in a nation of values. We believe in human dignity. So when we see a person rolled up in a blanket, sleeping on our streets, something deep within us realizes that something meaningful must be done to help this person. We often feel a very real sense of guilt and shame for failing to do something to help. If nothing is done, these people will just continue to suffer and die on our streets. If we fail to act soon, there will be blood on our hands. At that point, we may ask ourselves, why didn't we do something earlier when we had a chance to help these poor souls? We elect our political representatives to speak for us, to vote for us, and to look after the needs of our society. They represent not only those who voted them into office, they represent all constituents, including the homeless. The time has come for us to demand that these officials do something meaningful to help the homeless. Our social safety net needs to be large enough, strong enough, and secure enough so that everyone who needs our help does not fall through the ever-widening gaps. Homelessness from an economic perspective. Our nation has spent vast amounts of money on its last two military ventures. In fact, we borrowed over $7 trillion in order to invade and destroy Iraq and Afghanistan. More importantly, we have lost the lives of thousands of our precious soldiers fighting these misguided wars with questionable goals and uncertain outcomes. Our nation has spent over 17 years fighting in Afghanistan. This is a war in which we find ourselves no closer to winning than the day we decided to invade the country. Were the wars worth the high costs? On the home front, our nation's infrastructure is crumbling right before our very eyes. We have been told that there's no money left to rebuild it. Adding salt to the wound, elected officials in Washington decided that the wealthiest among us deserved a $1.5 trillion tax break, a gift funded by middle-class taxpayers to pay for these cuts. The President and some of the Congress have proposed making massive cuts to our nation's social safety net programs. These include huge cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and funds allocated to help feed infants, children, and the poor. This massive tax cut has helped to boost the already enormous wealth of this nation's corporate leaders. They're using this money to buy back their corporation's stock. This causes the stock price to increase in value. This, in turn, increases their salaries because their salaries are tied directly to the stock price. Is it any wonder that there's little, if any, money left to help the homeless? It should come as no surprise that working to end homelessness is not considered a high priority. As it stands, there is very little money being set aside to make a serious effort to end homelessness. Wars and tax breaks for the wealthy are just two ways elected officials have found to spend our precious tax dollars. Funding our nation's prisons is another very expensive venture. Taxpayers spend at least $40,000 a year to house and care for each one of our millions of prisoners. We spend close to $100 billion each year to keep people in prison. This is done without any real attempt at trying to reform or rehabilitate them before they are released back to our streets. Many of the incarcerated become homeless once they are released from prison, with a recidivism rate hovering around 70%. Most of these prisoners will eventually end up back in prison after having committed even more crimes. Spending billions on our prisons diverts tax dollars away from other important and worthwhile programs that may have prevented some of these people from turning into a life of crime in the first place. Prevention of crime should be one of our nation's top priorities. Preventing criminal behavior is much less expensive than locking people up. We should be investing in early childhood education, after-school programs, and even high-quality daycare centers. This would help relieve some of the pressure from those parents who are busy working and cannot be there when their children get out of school, leaving no one to look after them. We should also be doing a better job of educating our youth about the very real dangers of using alcohol and drugs. We need to make a real effort to prevent up-and-coming generations from becoming this nation's future prison population. Having prisons may be a necessary evil, but we should also try to understand why so many people end up in them. Prisons are a long-term burden on society, and while incarcerated, they do not add much in the way of value to our nation or to its economy. While it's important that we keep our society safe and keep dangerous criminals off the streets, one fact remains. Locking up millions of people is very costly, wasting not only our scarce monetary resources, but also human lives. Prisons are just one way to spend our limited tax revenues. We also spend an enormous amount of money defending this country. In 2018, President Trump asked for and received an $80 billion increase in this country's already sizable defense budget. We now spend close to $800 billion each year to defend this nation. Some may ask whether this level of protection is really worth the enormous cost. Exactly how much security do we really need? The fact is that our nation spends more money than it receives in taxes. We are literally borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars each year from our children and grandchildren to finance this enormous military budget. This society's security comes at a very high cost. It comes at the expense of other very important national priorities, all of which get pushed to the back burner or even right off the stove. In addition to paying to defend this country, our nation desperately needs safe highways, quality health care for everyone, and an educational system that is second to none. These are just a few of this nation's critical needs among many others that need to be addressed with our limited tax dollars. This country needs more than just guns, bombs, planes, and nuclear weapons. One should question whether this country has its priorities straight. For instance, one national priority that is underfunded, often ignored, and simply overlooked is the homelessness crisis. Perhaps we ought to do a little more to help these people find a place to live. The political strength of the homeless. The homeless could help themselves immensely if they were to organize and become politically active. If they were to vote as a bloc, they would wield the political clout to put the needed pressure on their elected representatives so that they would sit up and take notice and begin to look after their interests. If the homeless were to come together, work as one, and vote as a collective group, they could become a very powerful political coalition. They could then leverage this political power, forcing their elected officials to work for them instead of against them. Voting as a bloc, they would be able to persuade their elected officials to fight for those causes and issues that are important to them. If the homeless were to organize and come together as one, they could become a powerful constituency. Political leaders would have to take them seriously and begin to do all they possibly could to earn their support. The homeless have the potential to become a powerful group of voters able to achieve together what they have not been able to achieve individually. But as it stands presently, the homeless do not vote consistently. They do not vote as one group, nor do they organize. Unfortunately, this means that they will continue to be ignored and not taken seriously. Unless they vote, their interests will just continue to be pushed aside, giving nothing more than lip service by those in power. Chapter 2. What can be done to help end homelessness? The issue of homelessness desperately needs to be addressed quickly because human lives are at stake. Sometimes it takes a crisis before people will step up and act. We are facing just such a crisis now, and without our help, hundreds of thousands of scared, tired, beaten souls could easily perish on our streets. This book lays out a simple, cost-effective plan to help the homeless. It addresses many of the most critical problems connected with this dire situation. This book presents a plan that provides homeless individuals with a clean, private, comfortable, and safe place to lay their heads, a place to call home. It will also give them access to clean restrooms and an opportunity to take a hot shower. In addition, it offers them a wide variety of critically needed services, including medical care and mental health services. They will also be able to access high-quality psychological care and treatment. These services and more will be provided at no cost. This book presents a plan that offers hope not only to those homeless individuals in desperate need of shelter and vital services, but it offers hope for our community. It gives us a chance to stand up and show that we have a heart and that we do care for those in need. Homelessness not only threatens to tear our society apart, it also makes us question our sense of justice and fairness. It tugs at our conscience and even makes some of us question our humanity. We need our political leadership in the community to work together to address this crisis head on. We need to work together to do something meaningful before it's too late. This plan gives us that opportunity. We just need to implement it. A Way Forward, a step-by-step guide that offers our homeless brothers and sisters an opportunity to rejoin society with dignity that all people deserve. Where do we begin? Emergency shelters are not enough. Providing the homeless with a meal and a cot for one night may be better than nothing, but it falls well short of what is truly needed to thoroughly address this crisis. If we are serious about helping the homeless, we must act quickly if we are to save lives. We need to give the homeless an opportunity to gain hope and restore their dignity. We will need to work together if we are to accomplish this goal. Instead of simply offering a homeless person a place to stay for the night and a slice of cold pizza, we should be offering them a chance to rebuild their lives by providing them with a genuine opportunity to participate in the American dream. In most cities, affordable rental housing is extremely scarce. This tends to increase the number of homeless. There are over 500,000 homeless individuals in need of immediate housing. And unfortunately, locating and placing all these homeless individuals in emergency shelters, let alone affordable housing, is virtually impossible at this time. This plan will provide us with an extra time we'll need to build more housing units for those most in need. The plan outlined in this book is quite simple. It calls for quickly building affordable, individual, private, and comfortable sleeping units for the homeless. These sleeping units are modeled after what are commonly referred to as Japanese Businessmen Hotels. These hotels are designed to accommodate Japanese businessmen who tend to work late into the night, are far from home, and are in need of a place to sleep. These businessmen will very often choose these types of hotels because they are very affordable, comfortable, and convenient. These hotel suites are designed to act as individual sleeping units. If we were to reproduce this design and build these types of sleeping units for the homeless, we would be able to provide them with a comfortable, private, and secure place to reside at an affordable cost. These homeless housing units could be built within readily available commercial warehouse buildings. These buildings would also be large enough to accommodate bathroom and kitchen facilities. They would also have enough room to build a large dining room area. Each of these housing complexes would provide a temporary home for 80 homeless individuals. Each sleeping unit would be approximately 5 feet wide, 10 feet long, and 5 feet high. They could be constructed in several different ways. One possibility is to prefabricate them at an off-site location and then ship them and assemble them on-site. They could also be constructed completely on-site at a reasonable cost. The basic design for these sleeping units could be drawn up and blueprinted quite easily and inexpensively. These blueprints could then be shared among all those who may be interested in building more of these types of sleeping units. They can be constructed using a variety of building materials, including wood, concrete, aluminum, steel, and even plastic or fiberglass. Each sleeping unit would be identical to every other one. They would also be designed so that they could easily stacked one on top of another and secured to one another, becoming a set of double-stacked sleeping units. These double-stacked sleeping units would then be connected to other stacked sleeping units, creating a series of double-stacked sleeping units. These connected multiple double-stacked sleeping units would then be placed in 2 rows of 20, creating a total of 80 separate sleeping quarters. This would be enough to house 80 homeless individuals. These sleeping units will provide each of the 80 homeless residents with a clean, private, comfortable, and quiet place to relax and sleep, giving them a place they can call home. This housing complex will offer a temporary home for 80 homeless residents until a more permanent housing solution can be found. This plan calls for constructing multiple housing complexes in various locations throughout the country. Each of these homeless housing complexes are, by design, limited in size to accommodate only 80 individuals at a time in any one location. By limiting the number of residents living at each housing complex will help create a more intimate, close-knit community. Amenities inside the sleeping units. Inside each of the sleeping units, there'll be a small television set and AM/FM radio. Having a television and radio will allow the residents an opportunity to enjoy a little entertainment. More importantly, though, these technologies will give them access to vital information about the community, the country, and the world. The television and radio will also help the residents stay informed about the latest news and current weather reports. Heating and cooling the sleeping units. Each sleeping unit will be equipped with a small ventilation fan. These fans will allow the residents to have access to fresh air. There will also be vents inside each of the sleeping units. These vents will allow warm or cold air into each unit. This way, each resident will have the ability to heat or cool their individual sleeping unit to a comfortable temperature. The air conditioning and heat will be provided by way of a set of tubes connected to each of the sleeping units. These tubes will emanate from a centralized heating and air conditioning unit, which will provide a constant stream of warm and or cold air into each sleeping unit. This method of individualized heating and cooling will allow each of the residents to adjust the temperature in their units to their own personal comfort level. This method of heating and cooling the sleeping units individually will also help reduce the overall cost of heating and cooling the entire complex. This is because it is less expensive to heat and cool each sleeping unit than it is to heat and cool the entire building. The warehouse building itself will be heated and cooled via a separate heating and air conditioning system. Overall, the building will be kept fairly cool during the winter months and fairly warm during the warmer summer months. This will help to save money on the expense of heating and air conditioning the entire building. There will also be a series of large fans strategically located throughout the warehouse. These fans will be used to distribute the air throughout the warehouse, keeping the building cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. Lighting. Each sleeping unit will be equipped with a series of lights that will be controlled by the resident. There will also be a series of LED lights mounted overhead in the warehouse building. LED lighting provides a great deal of light for a lower cost than most other lighting methods. In addition to this overhead lighting, there will be several individual table lamps placed strategically throughout the housing complex. These lamps will not only provide additional light, but they'll also offer a soft, warmer, ambient light. In addition, they will also provide more direct light for reading and doing work that requires more intense lighting. Secure storage units. Being without a home usually means having to carry everything you own with you at all times. This inevitably creates problems for the homeless because they often must carry their blankets, clothes, jackets, tents, and other various supplies with them wherever they go. This severely limits the number of personal items a homeless person can own. The housing complex will provide each resident with a safe and secure place to store their belongings. To do this, 80 personal storage lockers will be constructed inside the warehouse building. Each of these personal lockers will be equipped with a lock and key so that the residents will be able to secure their personal items in a safe location. Each resident will be provided with a storage locker. Residents will have access to their lockers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Each of these storage lockers will be approximately 3 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and 3 feet deep. They will be large enough to store most, if not all, their personal items the resident may have with them. Having a storage unit also means that the residents will not have to keep any bulky items with them in their sleeping units, taking up valuable space. In other words, sleeping units will be for sleeping and storage units will be for storing personal items. Mailboxes. One major problem that most homeless people face is not having a permanent address. This means that they have no way to receive their mail. It also means that they cannot easily apply for many government programs and benefits they may be qualified to receive. To make sure that the residents at the housing complex can receive their mail, each resident will be provided with a mailbox. Library. For those residents who wish to read, a large selection of books will be made available at the complex's library. The residents will be able to check out a book or magazine for a few weeks at a time. To obtain reading material, nearby libraries will be asked if they have any extra books or periodicals they could donate to the complex for the residents to enjoy. All the residents will be encouraged to read, not only for their enjoyment, but also to keep their minds sharp. Computers and the Internet. Computers have become an extremely important part of people's lives. Almost everyone in America has access to some type of computer and the Internet. Being online offers people the opportunity to learn what's going on in their neighborhood, in the country, and even around the world. Having access to a computer and the Internet will allow the residents to stay in touch with others via social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. It will also help them to stay up with the latest news or search for a job. They may even be able to locate a more permanent housing arrangement. having access to an email account is also something almost everyone needs today. Having an email allows people to quickly and easily stay in touch with friends, family, and anyone else they may need to communicate with. The local community will be asked if they could donate any unused or unwanted computers, printers, keyboards, or any other computer components to the housing complex. Anyone who may be interested in helping teach the residents how to use the computer will be graciously invited to do so. Transportation. While there are some homeless who own a car, most lack any sort of transportation. This means that they must either walk or, when they can afford it, utilize public transportation services. The housing complex will be located in a commercial warehouse building, which may be on the outskirts of town. This means that the residents will very likely need some form of transportation so that they have access to the local community. To help provide the residents with transportation, an assortment of options will be made available to them. The complex will have several bicycles so that the residents will be able to get around town. These bicycles can be used to connect with local bus systems. Residents may want to ride to the bus stop where they can then lock up their bicycle and ride the bus. They may also want to ride buses which have specially designed bike racks located on the front of the bus. These racks can then carry the bicycle as the resident rides on the bus. This way, the bicycle is always available to the rider when they arrive at their destination. The residents will also be given bus tokens and/or a bus pass so that they'll be able to get around town fairly easily. Another transportation option is to hire a taxi, Lyft, or Uber driver to accommodate those residents who may not be able to ride a bicycle or walk long distances. These services are much more expensive than taking the bus, so this option will be reserved for those residents who are most in need. For instance, if a resident needs to see a doctor but cannot access the bus system due to their medical condition, then a taxi, Lyft, or Uber ride would be called upon to get them to their appointment. Exercise program. Exercise is very important to maintain one's health and fitness, and it helps to build and maintain a sound mind and body. Regular exercise has even been shown to reduce the symptoms of depression. It also helps people to lose weight and stay fit. Cardiovascular exercise is also crucial for maintaining healthy heart function. The housing complex will provide its residents with a variety of exercise programs designed to build not only one's muscles, but also to relax one's mind. One of these programs is Tai Chi. This form of exercise loosens up one's muscles while at the same time instilling a sense of well-being and calmness. Yoga classes will also be offered to the residents. This form of exercise tends to relax one's mind as you stretch and loosen up your muscles. Yoga also provides a strenuous workout. Residents from the local community who may be familiar with teaching either Tai Chi or yoga will be asked if they might be able to donate or help residents at the facility by leading them in a few classes. These instructors will then be asked if they could teach the residents to conduct these classes for themselves. There will also be bicycles available to the residents. These could be used for transportation, exercise, or just for pure enjoyment of riding. In addition, there will also be plenty of jump ropes for the residents to enjoy. Jumping rope and riding a bike are both very good cardiovascular exercises. Meditation. Sitting quietly and keeping one's thoughts to a minimum has many health benefits. It tends to free one's mind of invasive negative thoughts, while at the same time it helps open up new, creative, and hopefully more pleasant thoughts. The housing complex will offer its residents an opportunity to learn to meditate. They will learn a variety of meditation techniques. Anyone who is proficient and skilled in the practice of meditation and may be interested in teaching others will be invited to come teach this valuable relaxation exercise to the residents. Once they learn to meditate, these residents will then be asked if they could teach others at the facilities to meditate as well. Feeding the residents at the housing complex. In addition to building 80 private sleeping units, there will also be a commercial kitchen facility. This kitchen will be constructed within the commercial warehouse building. It will be used to prepare meals to feed the residents and staff members. To run this kitchen, a head chef will be hired who will have extensive experience working in and operating a restaurant. The head chef will oversee a staff of chefs, food preparation specialists, and kitchen assistants. They'll work to prepare and serve 3 nutritious meals each day for the housing complex's 80 residents and staff members. The head chef will be in charge of creating the menu as well as ordering the ingredients needed to bring this menu to life. The chefs, along with the food preparation specialists, will work to prepare the meals. The kitchen assistants will serve the food, clean off the tables, and wash the dishes. The goal is to eventually train some of the housing complex's residents to perform these kitchen duties. Residents who work as kitchen staff members will be paid the same wages as other members of the kitchen staff performing the same type of work. Residents who work in and around the kitchen will be carefully trained so that they'll eventually be able to handle all these positions. Residents who qualify and receive training will start out as kitchen assistants. They may work their way up to become food preparation specialists, and then, after receiving extensive additional training, they may eventually become chefs. The residents will be trained at these various positions so that they may gain valuable experience working in a commercial kitchen. Once they have mastered the skills needed to work in a kitchen at the housing complex, they will have the training and experience to work in the food service industry as busboys, dishwashers, food servers, food preparation specialists, and as chefs. Security. Along with the kitchen staff, the housing complex will also need a small dedicated security team that will work to keep the residents safe. These security personnel will be available 24/7, which will help to ensure a peaceful environment for the residents and staff. Initially, these security agents will be hired from an outside agency with a solid record for hiring and training high-quality security personnel. Residents who want to learn to work as a security agent and who have an aptitude in performing this type of work will be invited to apply for these positions. The residents who apply will be carefully vetted. If they pass this background check, they will receive specialized training to become members of the complex's security team. Once these residents are fully trained, they will have an opportunity to work as security agents at the complex. After they have worked a few months at the facility, they will then be well qualified to seek employment in this field with security agencies who are seeking well qualified, highly motivated, and well trained applicants. Janitorial staff. In addition to kitchen staff and security, the housing complex will also need a well-trained janitorial staff. They will look after the restrooms and shower areas as well as the kitchen and the dining room. The janitorial staff will be responsible for helping to keep the complex clean and livable. The housing complex will need a janitor to work through most of the day and the evening from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. The janitors will be paid a competitive wage. Initially, professional janitors will be hired to look after the facility. Residents who may be interested in working as a janitor will be thoroughly trained to work as a member of the janitorial staff. With the training and experience they receive working as a janitor at the facility, these residents will then be able to seek employment outside the complex, working in this field. Janitorial work usually pays well enough for one to earn a livable wage. Laundry staff. The housing complex will also employ a small number of people who will run the facility's laundry services. This job will include washing, drying, and sorting the residents' clothes so that they'll have clothing that is clean, fresh, and ready to wear. In addition to laundering clothes, these staff members will also be in charge of any clothes that may be donated to the complex. The laundry staff will be paid a competitive wage. Although these positions will initially be held by employees hired from outside the complex, any resident who may be interested will be trained to work as part of the laundry staff. Residents who work in this position at the complex will receive valuable work experience, which may help them secure employment outside the complex. Available employment opportunities for the residents. Residents will be invited to learn to work at the various staff positions. These will include working as a kitchen assistant, a food preparation specialist, security agent, janitor, or as a member of the laundry staff. Residents who are interested in working at the complex as part of the staff will be thoroughly trained for these positions. Residents who succeed in working as a kitchen assistant may eventually be trained to become food preparation specialists. After mastering this position, these residents may, with additional training, learn to work as a chef. Residents may also train to become a security agent, janitor, or part of the laundry staff. Managerial positions may be available to those residents that have the ability and skill needed to oversee the complex's operation and staff. The residents will learn to perform these various duties while on the job. In other words, they'll learn by doing. Each resident will work part-time, approximately 10 hours per week. By having them working part-time means that there will be enough work available for about 30 to 40 residents at any one time. Residents who work may want to save some of their earnings for such things as a security deposit on an apartment or perhaps purchase an automobile. The positions being offered will pay the workers between $15 and $25 an hour. So, for example, if you make $15 an hour and you work 10 hours a week, you'll earn $150 in a week. All these various employment opportunities offered to the residents will provide them with valuable skills. The plan is to hire residents who live at the housing complex to perform the jobs once they become available. Residents will be offered a chance at a meaningful employment that will pay them a fair and decent wage, comparable to those paid by other companies in the field. The residents will not need to have prior work experience in order to receive this employment opportunity. The only thing they'll need is a willingness to listen carefully, work hard, and have a genuine desire to do a good job. These jobs will offer the residents an opportunity to learn what it takes to be a productive employee. They'll receive high-quality instruction and training so that they'll be able to do their job in a professional manner. The residents will be trained for their positions by people who care about them and understand their situation. This training will also work to prepare the residents to go out and find employment outside the complex. They will receive valuable training and acquire skills and expertise needed to prepare them to rejoin the workforce. These jobs will allow them an opportunity to earn money that they will need to help them to overcome homelessness. Kitchen staff. There'll be a staff of chefs who will prepare the meals. Along with these chefs, there will be food preparation specialists. These specialists will prepare the food used by the chefs to create the meals for the residents. There will also be kitchen assistants who will help the chef and the food preparation specialist. They will serve the food, clean up after the meal, and wash the dishes. The kitchen staff will work 3 shifts. The first shift will prepare the breakfast, the second will make lunch, and the third will prepare dinner. The morning shift will last approximately 2 hours, from 6:30 a.m. until 8:30 a.m. Breakfast will be served at approximately 7:45 a.m. The second shift will prepare and serve lunch. This will take approximately 2 hours. The kitchen staff will begin preparing lunch around 10:45 and work until about 12:45. Lunch served at about 12 noon. The third shift will prepare and serve dinner. Dinner service will be approximately 3 hours. Dinner will be served at 6 p.m. They will begin their shift at around 4 o'clock and work until approximately 7 p.m. Chefs will earn $25 per hour. The food preparation specialists will earn $20 an hour, and the kitchen assistants will earn $15 per hour. The kitchen will be in operation approximately 67 hours per week. Staff, managers, security, janitorial, coordinator. The housing complex will operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To ensure that the complex is operating correctly, there will be a supervising manager who will oversee the entire operation. 3 assistant full-time managers will also be hired. They'll help run the complex and oversee the rest of the staff. There will always be a manager on site 24/7. The managers will each be paid $25 an hour, and they will each work 42 hours a week. There will also be security personnel on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There will be a security supervisor who will oversee the rest of the security staff. The security agents will be paid $15 an hour, and they will work a combination of full and part-time shifts. There will always be a manager and a security agent on site 24/7. The management and security teams will each work 168 hours per week. The housing complex will also have a janitorial staff. A janitor will be available at the complex from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. The janitorial staff will be made up of full and part-time workers. The manager of the housing complex will hire a supervising janitor who will oversee the rest of the janitorial staff. The janitors will be paid $15 an hour, and the janitorial staff will work 119 hours per week. Another key staff member that will be working with the residents at the housing complex will be the coordinator. This staff member will help the residents to apply for all the various government programs for which they may qualify. These government programs will be explained more in depth a little later in this book. The coordinator will also work to enlist the support of the volunteers who may be willing to help at the facility. These include medical staff and the team of mental health professionals. The coordinator will also work closely with other volunteers as well. The coordinator will help residents prepare for job interviews and help them fill out their job applications. The coordinator will also work part-time, approximately 20 hours per week, and will earn $25 per hour. Health Services, Chapter 3. Living on the streets is not only very difficult, but it's also very bad for one's health. The homeless generally require more health care services than someone who sees a doctor on a regular basis. It would be wiser to treat the medical needs of the homeless people sooner rather than later, because sometimes a minor medical issue can become extremely serious and very expensive to treat if it's not dealt with promptly. Homeless individuals at the complex will receive an array of health care services, all at no cost. These services will include both medical and mental health care services. To accomplish this, the complex's staff will work closely with local health care professionals to ensure that all the residents receive high-quality health care services. Upon arrival at the housing complex, each homeless person will receive a complete physical health screening and medical evaluation. These health screenings will include a complete physical examination, blood work, and any additional tests deemed medically necessary. One reason for this initial screening is to help prevent the transmission of communicable diseases such as tuberculosis, hepatitis A, pneumonia, or any other easily transmittable diseases. Testing for HIV will also be strongly recommended for all residents. Flu shots will also be made available for all staff members and residents. In addition, immunizations will be provided to all of the residents at the complex. This will be done to reduce the chances of them either transmitting or being infected by others with contagious diseases such as whooping cough, measles, mumps, chickenpox, etc. Providing high-quality health care services is very expensive. So in order to keep costs to a minimum, a variety of creative ideas and innovative approaches will be employed that will help to deliver a high level of care at an affordable price. One way to help keep costs under control will be to ask local health care providers if they could donate some of their valuable time, skills, and expertise assisting the residents at the housing complex with their medical needs. In addition, men and women who are in the process of becoming physicians and who may be in need of additional practicum hours will be asked if they might be willing to donate a little of their time assisting the residents at the complex with their medical care. By doing so, these healthcare professionals will receive valuable hands-on training and practice working with people in serious need of medical healthcare services. In helping these residents with their medical needs, these physicians will be performing an extremely valuable service not only for these residents, but also for their community. Other healthcare professionals will also be asked to volunteer some of their time and skills to help the complex's residents. In addition to physicians, there will also be a need for medical assistants, nurses, and medical billing specialists. Nursing assistants, licensed vocational nurses, and registered nurses who may be in training for a career in the healthcare industry will all be invited to help at the complex. This way, they may gain valuable experience, practice, and credit towards their medical degrees and/or professional advancement. Many homeless people do not have access to a health care provider, so they tend to use emergency rooms as their primary source of health care treatment. Emergency rooms are not a cost-effective way to deliver basic health care services. In fact, the use of emergency rooms is one of the most expensive ways to treat patients. These resources ought to be reserved only for those who are most in need of emergency medical care. If these hospitals could somehow reduce the number of unnecessary emergency room visits, they'd be able to save a substantial amount of money. So the idea is to treat the homeless at the housing complex and at local clinics instead of in the emergency rooms. This would likely save local hospitals a substantial amount of money. These hospitals may then be able to provide some of these savings to the housing complex to help defray some of its operating expenses. Another way to save money would be to utilize a new technology known as telemedicine. This form of care uses two-way video conferencing technology in such a way that the patient and doctor can communicate with one another both visually and audibly from great distances. This would be done via an internet-connected video link. This way the doctor will be able to see the patient and hopefully be able to diagnose and perhaps even treat the patient from a distance. The advantage of telemedicine is that it allows the doctor and patient to meet without having to travel to the other's location. Telemedicine can be used for checkups, health evaluations, diagnosing illnesses, and even recommending a treatment plan. The physician would also be able to send prescriptions directly to the patient's pharmacy. Telemedicine is a much less expensive option than an in-person visit, and it would save an enormous amount of time for both the doctor and the patient. The doctor could be practicing anywhere in the world and meet the patient so long as both have access to a camera and a microphone connected to a cell phone, tablet, or laptop, or a desktop computer. This is cutting-edge medicine, and it would very likely help to reduce the cost of medical care, not only at the housing complex, but in many other settings. One additional way to save money, while at the same time providing quality health care services, is to utilize a preventative approach to delivering health care. Treating the homeless early makes good sense both medically and financially. The argument in favor of practicing preventative medicine are twofold. First, by attempting to prevent illnesses from occurring in the first place, saves the patient from ever becoming ill. Second, it saves money by not having to pay for treating an illness that never arose. If an illness is already present, then the idea is to treat the illness early on before it becomes very expensive and extremely difficult to treat. The cost of preventative health care is paid up front, which is why most health insurance companies avoid this treatment option. But if you think about it, the logic of waiting for illnesses to develop and progress makes no sense economically or medically. Utilizing preventative health care will likely save money and keep patients from having to suffer needlessly while helping to prolong their lives and maybe even saving them from an early death. Keeping people healthy increases the quality of their life. It also helps keep the cost of health care down. People tend to be much more productive when they are not facing a health crisis or attempting to live with a chronic medical condition. Take diabetes as an example. Many people with this disease are able to avoid some of the most severe symptoms if they receive treatment early, eat a healthy diet, exercise, and keep their weight at a reasonable level. Prevention and early treatment are key to controlling many illnesses and diseases such as high blood pressure, glaucoma, liver disease, pulmonary disease, asthma, cancer, and many others. So prevention and early treatment of illness are two ways to help control the exorbitant costs of health care. They also help patients to live longer, more productive, and healthier lives. Using a preventative health care approach to the housing complex would very likely save a substantial amount of money. These are just a few ideas which will help keep the cost of treating the medical needs of the homeless living at the housing complex within reason. Utilizing a preventative health care approach would be a win-win situation for both the homeless residents and the state and federal run healthcare systems. This is because the residents would receive much-needed health care while also allowing the insurance programs to keep their costs to a minimum, which would likely save these programs a substantial amount of money over time. Health insurance. The homeless are among the society's poorest. Most of them would easily qualify for one of the many public health insurance programs. One of the reasons the homeless do not have access to health care system is because most of them probably never applied for the benefits they are legally entitled to receive. Most homeless people would easily qualify for Medicaid or Medi-Cal, which is California's version of this program. These programs are both publicly funded. These healthcare systems are designed to provide healthcare services for those with little or no income. They offer a safety net for those in need of health care and for those who may lack the money to buy private health insurance coverage. Medicaid and Medi-Cal are funded by a combination of federal and state tax dollars. Both programs can be utilized to help provide high-quality health care services for the residents at the housing complex. Medicare is another health insurance program designed for those who are either retired and/or permanently disabled mentally or physically. If any of the homeless housing residents are permanently disabled, they would very likely qualify for not only Medicare but also for Medicaid and/or Medi-Cal. Approximately 1 out of 3 members of the homeless community are military veterans. Most veterans are entitled to receive GI benefits upon completion of their military service. These benefits include VA healthcare benefits and services. The housing complex may be able to coordinate with those healthcare professionals who work under contract with Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare, and/or the VA to provide medical services to the residents at the housing facility. These physicians would then be able to see a number of patients in one location. This would also save the residents from having to travel long distances to meet with their doctors. Medications could also be paid for by Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare, and our VA healthcare insurance programs. This way, the residents would be able to receive their prescriptions at no cost. Psychiatric services. One of the most troublesome and debilitating challenges most homeless people face is mental illness. Homeless people who are feeling extremely depressed or who have other very serious psychiatric problems may have suicidal or even homicidal thoughts. If these psychiatric conditions are left untreated, there's a very real possibility that these individuals may attempt suicide or perhaps even harm another innocent person. These tragedies may be averted if those suffering with mental illness were able to receive mental health services. It would be tragic if someone were to get seriously injured or worse, lose their life, all because someone who is severely mentally ill does not have access to mental health professional. Our society would suffer not only the loss of an innocent life, but it may also be held liable for this death because it failed to recognize this danger and failed to take the necessary steps to prevent this tragedy from occurring. As mentioned previously, about a third of the homeless population are veterans of war. Many of them suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, usually brought on by their combat experience. PTSD is a very serious mental illness, and those suffering with it usually need professional help in dealing with its symptoms. Veterans have one of the highest suicide rates in the nation, and tragically, PTSD has led many veterans to take their own lives. Unfortunately, there's stigma associated with mental illness, especially in the military. This is one of the primary reasons so many people suffering with mental illness never seek professional treatment. Mental health professionals working at the housing complex will be specially trained to help these former soldiers deal with their PTSD symptoms using some of the latest techniques and therapeutic treatments. The homeless usually do not have access to mental health services, and therefore oftentimes many of them go through life struggling with untreated mental illness. They may be dealing with such things as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, or many other forms of mental illness. One of the key aspects of this homeless housing plan is its ability to provide high-quality mental health services to all the complex's residents. Among these critical services will be an opportunity for each resident to see a psychiatrist who will perform a complete mental health evaluation. This will be done to determine if any of the residents may be suffering from a psychiatric disorder. If these residents are diagnosed with a psychiatric illness, they will then receive the appropriate treatment and/or medication. If ongoing psychiatric treatment is deemed medically necessary, the residents will be able to continue to be seen by a psychiatrist on a regular basis. The residents will also be carefully evaluated to see if they are a danger to themselves or others. If this is found to be the case, these residents will be immediately transported over to a locked mental health facility where they'll be able to receive the appropriate treatment. Psychiatric services are very expensive, so an effort will be made to keep these costs within reason. One way to do this would be to ask psychiatrists working in the local community if they could donate a little bit of their precious time and skill in helping the residents at the housing complex. They could also conduct mental health evaluations and hopefully continue to see those residents that need ongoing treatment. Medicaid, Medi-Cal, and Medicare health insurance may also help pay for mental health services. Residents who are military veterans will also very likely qualify for VA benefits, which may also help pay for their mental health services. Psychiatrists under contract with Medi-Cal, Medicaid, Medicare, and or the VA may agree to come out to the housing complex to work with the residents. They would be then reimbursed through their respective insurance programs. Psychiatrists will evaluate and treat the residents when they first arrive at the housing complex. They will then conduct a follow-up visit on a regular basis. If a resident is found to have a psychiatric condition that requires the use of psychotropic medications, these drugs will then be prescribed and provided to the residents. To pay for these medications, the residents will need to be enrolled in Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare, or other VA health insurance programs. All psychiatric services and medications will be made available to the residents at no charge. Psychological services. Being homeless creates a tremendous amount of stress. This stress is ongoing and ever-present. Many homeless people also struggle with a wide variety of mental health issues. These mental conditions are sometimes so severe that they may even lead to homelessness. Obviously, there's very limited, if any, mental health services available to homeless people while they're living on the streets. As mentioned previously, the plan detailed and outlined in this book will provide the residents living at the housing complex with access to psychiatric care and treatment. Upon arrival, a resident will first meet with a psychiatrist for a thorough psychiatric evaluation. If they are subsequently diagnosed with a psychiatric condition, they may be written a prescription for medication. Psychiatric treatment generally involves the psychiatrist meeting with the patient for a brief period of time, usually about 10 to 20 minutes. These appointments are designed this way so that the psychiatrist can quickly evaluate the patient to see if the medication that they were prescribed are working as intended or to see if a change in medication is warranted. These brief appointments with a psychiatrist are usually not designed for any sort of extensive treatment and or counseling. If the patient requires psychological counseling, these services are usually performed by a psychologist, counselor, or a psychotherapist. The residents who need counseling services will be provided with a therapist. The plan is to offer the residents at the housing complex high-quality psychological services in addition to the psychiatric services. A team of highly qualified and well-trained psychological counselors will be made available to the residents. These counselors will offer a wide array of treatment options. One such treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This type of therapy tends to work very well for people suffering with moderate to severe depression. There will also be therapists who are specially trained to conduct other forms of therapy, including talk therapy, existential therapy, and other types of behavioral therapies, along with various forms of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. The number of counseling sessions will be determined by the resident's therapist and the team of mental health specialists working at the housing complex. This team will include the resident's therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a social worker. Psychological services are generally very expensive and usually not available to most people without health care insurance coverage. Even if you are lucky enough to have insurance, the therapy sessions available are often very limited in scope. Sometimes patients are permitted to see only a few specific psychologists or therapists who are under contract with their insurance company. And in addition, the number of therapy sessions you can receive may also be severely restricted. At the housing complex, the residents will be able to work with any of the available counselors. The number of counseling sessions will be determined by the therapist, the resident, and the team of mental health specialists. To help keep costs down and to fund these vital psychological services, several creative approaches will be utilized. First, the residents will be enrolled in one of the various public health insurance programs that pays for mental health services. Again, these include Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare, and the VA for veterans living at the complex. These programs usually contract with a select number of mental health specialists and counselors, but unfortunately, there are not too many of these counselors available. In other words, there are not enough counselors who will accept this type of insurance. If you are lucky enough to find a therapist who accepts this insurance, the number of counseling sessions you receive will be quite limited. The reason that most therapists do not accept this type of insurance is because the reimbursement rates that they are paid for their services is rather minuscule. There are a few clinicians who will accept this type of insurance coverage. These therapists will be invited to the housing complex to counsel the residents who qualify for this type of insurance coverage. Psychologists, psychotherapists, and psychoanalysts and other counseling specialists will also be asked if they could donate some of their precious time, skill, and expertise working with residents at the housing complex. Another creative way to save money will be to ask students attending local colleges and universities working toward a degree in clinical psychology if they might be interested in earning practicum hours by counseling some of the residents at the housing complex. Practicum hours are the hours a student must work in the field of their study before they can graduate. For instance, students working towards a master's degree in clinical psychology will usually perform approximately 500 practicum hours of counseling before they're permitted to graduate. Doctoral students working toward a counseling degree are required to perform approximately 3,000 hours of practicum counseling before they're qualified to graduate. So, the idea is to invite these highly trained university students to work as counselors at the housing complex. This would be a win-win proposition for everyone involved because it would give the residents at the complex the opportunity to receive high-quality counseling while at the same time it would provide these students with a wide variety of clients in need of counseling services. The cost of doing this would be minimal and the experience for both the residents and the students would be invaluable. It would offer the students an opportunity to gain experience counseling while at the same time it also helped them to develop their professional expertise and skill. Another inexpensive and innovative approach in treating mild to moderate depression is using computerized cognitive behavioral therapy, CCBT. Users of computerized cognitive behavioral therapy sit at a computer and interact with a software program which has been specially designed to act as their therapist. This software program takes the place of a therapist who would normally take the client through the steps of this type of therapy. Computerized cognitive behavioral therapy takes 12 weeks to complete as the client works on one of 12 different sessions each week. Computerized CBT uses an interactive process in which the computer software program asks the client various questions and then, depending on the answers received, responds with ways to help the client learn to cope with or even do away with their negative thought processes. The program also gives the user certain homework assignments. These assignments help the client practice what they have learned during each computerized CBT session. Using computerized CBT has been shown to be quite effective at treating less severe forms of depression. Another huge benefit is using this type of therapy is that it's much less expensive than having to pay a licensed therapist to conduct traditional CBT therapy sessions. There are several companies who produce this computerized CBT software programs. These companies may be kind enough to donate their software programs to the complex or perhaps offer them at a deeply discounted rate. Individual and group counseling services. The housing complex will offer residents in need of counseling either individual counseling and or group therapy. These residents will meet with a therapist who will conduct a thorough and extensive psychological interview and evaluation. During this evaluation session, the counselor will perform any necessary psychological tests. These tests may help the therapist better understand the client's mental health needs. Following this evaluation session, the resident's counselor will meet with a team of mental health specialists where they will discuss their case thoroughly and design a personalized treatment plan. This may include further counseling. Again, this team of specialists will include a counselor, psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a social worker. If a client needs additional treatment, and the resident will then be placed with a counselor who specializes in the therapy approach most appropriate for that client. In addition to individual counseling, the client may also be asked to attend group therapy. These group therapy sessions will be made up of 8 to 10 participants. These groups will have 1 or 2 group leaders who will specifically be trained to conduct this type of therapy. These therapy groups will meet several times each week. They will discuss a wide variety of topics and work on specific aspects of each member's personal life. So, each resident will be seen by a psychiatrist when they first arrive at the housing complex. They will then be thoroughly evaluated and given the proper treatment and/or medications. Each resident will then be evaluated by a psychological counselor, interviewed in depth. Following this evaluation, the resident's therapist will then consult with the team of highly trained mental health specialists who will then design an individual treatment plan. This treatment plan may include the resident seeing a psychiatrist on a regular basis or being prescribed psychotropic medications. The residents may also be assigned a therapist and may be asked to attend individual and/or group therapy. The psychological services offered at the housing complex will be wide-ranging and extensive. The mental health specialists working there will include psychiatrists, licensed clinical psychologists, psychotherapists, psychoanalysts, and those in training to become mental health counselors. Chapter 4, Rehabilitative Services. Many homeless individuals who suffer with mental illness often self-medicate using alcohol and/or an assortment of various drugs. When alcohol and/or drugs are combined with untreated mental illness, the results can be disastrous, not only for the person using these substances, but also for society in general. Those using and abusing drugs and alcohol are usually not living a full and productive life. Over time, these substances tend to alter one's mind and body to a point where the user cannot function normally. A variety of treatment services will be made available to all residents who use drugs and/or alcohol, whether they have a mental illness or not. One very successful program designed to help those who wish to stop drinking alcohol is Alcoholics Anonymous. This organization conducts meetings in which a group of people get together and discuss their alcohol use. These meetings are very similar to group therapy sessions, except that these AA sessions are led by a recovering alcoholic and not a mental health professional. Alcoholics Anonymous groups offer people an opportunity to share how alcohol has affected their life. This is done in a safe environment and in an understanding way. In addition to AA, another promising treatment option for alcohol abuse will be available at the housing complex. This method uses an opioid antagonist medication known as naltrexone and a newer drug called nalmefene. These drugs block opioid receptor synapses in the brain, which helps to reduce one's craving for alcohol. This treatment works best when it's combined with cognitive behavioral therapy. Both the medication and CBT will be available for those residents who are in the process of recovery and are abstaining from the use of alcohol. Narcotics Anonymous is another very successful program designed to help people who are struggling with drug abuse. In many ways, the NA program is very similar to the AA program. Both are designed to help people struggling to overcome their addictions. These programs help people get their lives back on track. AA and NA programs are both 12-step programs. Each of these programs have been successful at helping people to retake control of their lives. Both programs have been effective at helping people regain their dignity and self-respect. Most importantly, these programs have worked in helping people become sober and abstain from using drugs and alcohol. Alcoholics Anonymous. The homeless complex will hold AA meetings at the facility. Every resident will be encouraged to attend these meetings whether they currently drink or not. One of the main facets of AA meetings is that they are run by an alcoholic who is in the process of recovery. These group leaders have a lifetime of experience to share with other group members of the group. They understand what it's like to be both an alcoholic as well as someone who is in the process of recovery. 2 AA meetings will be available to the housing complex every day, one in the morning and another in the evening. These meetings will be held in one of the facility's meeting rooms. The meeting will have room for about 15 participants. If more than 15 people show up for this meeting, then a second one will be arranged to handle the additional guests and members. Narcotics Anonymous. Another program has shown promise and had some success in helping those struggling with drug use is Narcotics Anonymous. As mentioned previously, this program models itself on Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. It offers its members an opportunity to meet with other drug users. All the residents living at the housing complex will be invited and encouraged to join the NA meetings, whether or not they currently use drugs and or now in the process of recovery. Like AA, NA also holds meetings in which a small group of individuals come together to discuss their struggles in overcoming their addictions. NA meetings are very similar to AA meetings in that they are both hosted by a former addict, someone who is trying to remain clean and sober. NA group leaders have a lifetime of experience to share with other members of the group. They understand that what it's like to be a drug user as well as someone who is in the process of recovery. These NA meetings will be held at the housing complex in one of its meeting rooms. These meetings will have room for about 15 attendees. If more than 15 people show up, and another meeting will be arranged to accommodate the overflow. The NA meetings will be held twice a day, once in the morning and again in the evening. To attend these meetings, one does not necessarily need to be clean and sober, but hopefully the group's participants will not show up while under the influence of drugs and or alcohol. It is hoped that the residents attending these meetings will be ready to move forward past this chapter of their lives. It's also hoped that they'll put forth the hard work needed to live their lives drug and alcohol free. To be truly productive, one needs to be full use of their mental and physical capacities. This usually entails being clean and sober. The AA and NA meetings will be scheduled in such a way that residents who wish to attend both sets of meetings will be able to do so. Both AA and NA meetings will be offered to the residents living at the housing complex at no cost. Opioid treatment recovery programs. The United States is facing a very serious opioid epidemic. It's been spreading rapidly throughout the country with deadly effects. It seems that almost everybody knows someone who has fallen victim to this highly addictive drug. This epidemic of opioid use, abuse, overdose, and death has also affected the homeless population quite dramatically. For some of them, using opioids may be the only way to escape homelessness. It offers them a quick, temporary fix to their problems and a way out of their dire predicament. Using opioids takes them away from their plight, at least momentarily. Unfortunately, this escape is short-lived because once the high subsides, they must once again face the cruel reality of being homeless. Opioids come in a wide variety of formulations and strengths. Some opioids are legal and prescribed for those with serious pain. They are often given to patients following surgical procedures or to those with very serious chronic pain. Legally prescribed opioids include Vicodin, hydrocodone, codeine, morphine, oxycodone, OxyContin, fentanyl patches. Fentanyl patches are usually reserved for patients with extreme pain. The opioids being sold on the streets include many of the prescribed opioid medications just mentioned, along with many others, including heroin, fentanyl, and carfentanil. Fentanyl and carfentanil are very powerful, extremely potent synthetic opioids. Fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine, while carfentanil is 1,000 times as potent. People who use illicit drugs such as heroin are overdosing at alarming rates. One of the primary reasons for this is that the heroin being sold on the street is being cut with other drugs, especially fentanyl and sometimes even carfentanil. This makes this so-called heroin extremely potent and extremely deadly to all those who inject or snort it without knowing it has been cut. The users of this toxic drug combination are extremely susceptible to overdosing, which often leads to their death. Once an opioid is used, a tolerance soon develops, whereby the user needs to increase the dose of the drug to receive a similar high. Opioids can be taken orally, nasally, or intravenously, and injecting drugs comes with many risks. Putting a drug directly into your bloodstream can sometimes be fatal. If one injects too much of the drug, or if the opioid mixture being used is too potent, one could easily overdose and die. Opioids, like heroin, will usually cause the user's respiratory system to begin to slow down or even stop altogether, which often causes them to suffocate and die. Using drugs intravenously may also introduce harmful contaminants into the bloodstream. This may result in death. If needles are shared with other users, there's a very high risk of becoming infected with serious illnesses such as HIV or hepatitis C, both of which may lead to an early death. One huge problem facing us today is the irresponsible disposal of used hypodermic needles. Users tend to leave them laying in the streets, along highways, in parks, and even in front of schools. Needle exchange. The opioid epidemic has hit the homeless population very hard. Among the homeless, there are a fairly high percentage of opioid users. Using non-prescription opioids such as heroin jeopardizes not only the user's health, but it also tends to get the user arrested and thrown into jail. The idea of a needle exchange is rather controversial. Opponents of a needle exchange argue that it just promotes drug use, while proponents of the idea say that having a clean needle exchange makes sense because it will help to keep used needles from being discarded indiscriminately and helps to prevent the transmission of diseases from shared and dirty needles. Everyone would probably agree that used needles present an extremely dangerous biological hazard. So hopefully exchanging dirty needles for clean ones will help ensure that these used needles are not left lying around. In addition, by exchanging dirty needles with clean ones, addicts will not have to reuse their needles or share them with other users. It will also help to reduce infections and transmission of diseases like HIV, hepatitis C, and help to prevent innocent people from being accidentally poked by them. Having a place in which to exchange dirty needles will help in identifying those residents who are using HIV drugs. This is important because once they are identified, they can be offered the help they need to stop using these drugs. The plan outlined in this book attempts to address the opioid crisis by offering residents who use opioids an opportunity to seek treatment. The treatments offered to the residents will include opioid replacement therapies, individual and group counseling, and an open invitation to attend NA meetings. These treatments are designed to help these residents to not only get off drugs, but to abstain from using them for the rest of their lives. Injection site. Another, perhaps even more controversial idea that seems to make a great deal of sense is to offer the users of IV drugs a safe place to use these illicit medications. Intravenous drug users should be allowed to use their drugs at the housing complex in a designated location where they would be carefully supervised by trained medical personnel. In case anyone overdoses, a medication known as Narcan could then be administered. This drug has been shown to be extremely effective at reversing the symptoms of an overdose. Narcan has an ability to bring someone who may be close to death back to life. While they are injecting their drugs at the housing complex, these users can also be informed of the many treatment options available to them so that eventually, hopefully, they'll be able to seek the treatment they will need to overcome this brutal addiction. The goal is to bring the intravenous drug-using residents off the streets so that they can use their drugs under medical supervision and be offered the help they need to get off drugs for good. Hopefully, they'll eventually choose to accept this help. not be any pressure put on anyone to stop using drugs at any time. The only method of persuasion that will be used is gentle encouragement. In the meantime, these IV drug users will be offered clean needles, a safe place to get their fix, and every opportunity to get the treatment they need to quit using these drugs. Methadone treatment. The opioid treatment programs offered at the housing complex will provide the residents with an opportunity to receive the help they need to overcome their addiction. Opioids are one of the most difficult drugs to quit using. It is also very likely that it will take an opioid user several attempts before they're able to quit using this drug altogether. Several methods will be utilized to help residents overcome their addiction to opioids. One of these methods is known as methadone treatment. Opioid users who are attempting to quit using will be given a daily dose of methadone to help them maintain their sense of well-being while at the same time reducing the intense feelings of withdrawal and the cravings for the drug. Methadone does not get the user high. This method of treatment is often referred to as replacement therapy or maintenance therapy. In other words, replacing opioids with methadone so that the user can maintain their sobriety. Residents who qualify for methadone treatment will receive a dose of this medication every day at the housing complex. Residents receiving methadone will also be seen regularly by a psychiatrist. In addition, they'll receive individual counseling to help them deal with their addiction and assist them in their recovery. These residents will also be encouraged to attend group therapy sessions. These group sessions will be designed to help them cope with the stress that may come about while attempting to stay clean and sober. Residents who are taking methadone will also be strongly encouraged to attend at least one NA meeting per day to help them maintain their sobriety. Subutex therapy. Another treatment option that will be made available to residents addicted to opioids utilizes a new medication known as Subutex. This medication helps curb the cravings and withdrawal symptoms that are felt by opioid users once they have stopped using the drug. Residents who choose to enter this treatment program will be prescribed Subutex. These residents will also be seen regularly by a psychiatrist, and they will receive individual counseling to help them deal with their addiction and assist them in their recovery. These residents will also be encouraged to attend group therapy sessions. These group therapy sessions are designed to help them cope with the stress that may come about while they work to stay clean and sober. Those residents who are given Subutex will be asked to attend at least one NA meeting per day to help them remain drug-free. The goal of these opioid treatment programs is to offer the residents a safe and hopefully effective means to end their opioid addiction. These treatment programs will work in conjunction with the other medical and mental health care services being offered at the housing complex. In other words, all these programs will be coordinated in such a way that they'll be able to look after each resident's individual needs. This way, each resident will receive specific care and treatment that they need. The goal of offering AA and NA meetings and having the methadone and Subutex treatment programs is to provide the residents with proven, safe, and effective ways to stop using both drugs and alcohol. All of these treatment programs have been shown to help people overcome their addictions. Unfortunately, none of these treatment programs offer a quick and easy fix to addiction. In fact, each of these programs will require a great deal of effort and persistence in order to achieve success. It's important that we provide these residents with an opportunity to stop using drugs and/or alcohol so that they may be able to regain their hope, dignity, and self-respect. Smoking. Many homeless people smoke. Smoking is not only very bad for one's health, it's also extremely expensive addiction. A single pack of cigarettes often costs between $7 and $10, if not more. Residents living at the housing complex will not be required to quit smoking. In fact, there will be a designated smoking area located outside of the housing complex for the residents who choose to smoke. Attempting to quit smoking is not easy. It is one of the most difficult addictions to overcome. Even when a smoker tries to quit, it often takes them many attempts before they're able to achieve this goal. For any resident who wishes to quit smoking, a smoking cessation program will be made available to them at no cost. Smoking Cessation Program. The smoking cessation program being offered at the housing complex will be a comprehensive and state-of-the-art. Residents who smoke will be encouraged to take part in this program. The first step in the smoking cessation program will be educational. This portion of the program will help to explain the many dangers associated with smoking and informs them of the many ways available to help them quit. One way to quit smoking is through the use of nicotine replacement therapy. The idea is to switch from smoking tobacco to using a safer method to introduce nicotine into their bloodstreams. One way of doing this is by using a vaporizer. This is a device which has an electric coil powered by a battery that heats up a liquid nicotine solution until it turns into a vapor. At this point, the user inhales the vapor into their lungs, which then delivers nicotine into their bloodstream. This is a fairly new technology, and the research thus far has shown that vaping seems to be less harmful than smoking traditional cigarettes, although some people have switched to vaping to get their nicotine fix. Some people have been able to quit smoking altogether using this method. The strength of nicotine in the vaping solution can be adjusted. For instance, a heavy smoker may start out by using the highest level of nicotine in their vaping solution. They may then begin to use lower and lower levels of nicotine in their vaping solution until they finally reach a point where they can eventually quit vaping altogether. Another nicotine replacement method that will be offered to the residents is the nicotine patch. These are transdermal patches which are usually placed on the arm of the smoker. Once in place, these patches release a consistent level of nicotine into the wearer's bloodstream via their skin. The patch is then replaced every day with a new one. These patches are designed to be used in stages. The first stage is the strongest dosage, usually 21 milligrams. These 21 milligram patches are worn for about 2 weeks. Next stage is 14 milligrams, which is a step down in strength. These 14 milligram patches are also worn for approximately 2 weeks. The last stage is the lowest, 7 milligrams. These patches are also worn for about 2 weeks. At this point, the smoker has very little nicotine left in their bloodstream, and they should, in theory, be able to quit using the patches altogether. These patches are usually worn all day and night during sleep. But one must be careful when wearing the patch while sleeping because the nicotine in the patch tends to cause extremely vivid nightmares. Additional nicotine replacement methods will also be made available to the complex's residents. These include nicotine gum, throat lozenges, nasal sprays, all of which contain nicotine. These products allow the smoker to get their nicotine fix without having to smoke. These nicotine replacement methods would be used in lieu of the nicotine patches. So there are vaporizers, nicotine patches, nicotine gum, nicotine lozenges, nasal spray containing nicotine, all of which allow the smoker to avoid lighting up while still getting nicotine into their bloodstreams. These products help fend off many of the cravings felt by smokers when they attempt to quit cold turkey. Medications have also been developed for those who are trying to quit smoking. The first is Varenicline, this is known as Chantix. This medication interferes with the nicotine receptors in the brain, lessening the pleasurable feelings the smoker receives as they smoke. This drug also tends to reduce the symptoms of withdrawal. Another medication designed to help one to quit smoking is an antidepressant known as bupropion, also known as Wellbutrin or Zyban. This medication is taken for 7 to 12 weeks prior to the smoker quitting. These are all proven methods to help one quit smoking. It's also recommended that smokers attempting to quit get some form of counseling, either individual or in group setting. Counseling will be made available to all residents who are trying to quit smoking. The residents will be free to try any of these many options to help them attain their goal of quitting, all at no cost. Dental services. While living on the streets, homeless people may have a difficult time taking care of their teeth. This means that for many of them, their teeth and gums become neglected, which can often lead to very serious dental problems. Staff at the housing complex will help the residents apply for public health insurance such as Medicaid and Medi-Cal. These programs may help for some rudimentary dental care. Residents will be sent to local dentists who accept this type of health insurance coverage. There they may be able to get their teeth cleaned, receive x-rays, and have their cavities filled. If the residents need more extensive dental work performed, things such as crowns, root canals, implants, etc., then the staff at the housing complex will check with the local dental schools who may be able to perform these types of procedures for little or no expense. Chapter 5. Applying for Benefits. The homeless population is among the poorest in the nation. People living below the poverty line are encouraged to apply for an array of government programs. As mentioned previously, most homeless people will qualify for Medi-Cal and or Medicaid health insurance benefits. Homeless individuals who are permanently disabled or are over 62 years of age will likely qualify for Medicare health insurance benefits. Any of these homeless who are veterans will probably qualify for VA healthcare benefits. The staff at the housing complex will help those who qualify for any of these programs and benefits to apply for them. In addition to healthcare insurance benefits, there are still other government programs and benefits which the residents may be qualified to receive. One such program is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. This program helps low-income individuals purchase food by supplementing their food budget. To receive SNAP benefits, the residents will have to fill out a lengthy application to see if they qualify for this program. Even though it takes some time to complete the application process, it's well worth it. Another program designed to assist those with little or no income is General Relief, GR. This program provides a small cash payment to qualified recipients each month. Then there is the Social Security program. This program is designed for those who are over the age of 62 and retired. Even if a person has never worked, they may still be qualified to collect Social Security benefits. To receive these benefits, one must apply with the Social Security Administration. Another program which is administered by the Social Security Administration is Social Security Disability Insurance Program, the SSDI program. This program is designed to provide benefits for people with a permanent disability. This can be either physical or a mental disability. These benefits include receiving a monthly check as well as receiving Medicare health care insurance coverage. In order to receive SSDI benefits, residents will need to fill out an application for this program with the Social Security Administration. Unfortunately, it can sometimes take several years to be approved for SSDI benefits, and almost everyone who applies for them will initially be denied and will have to appeal their case. They may be forced to appeal their case several times before they are finally accepted into this program. Applicants to this program must be persistent and keep appealing every time they are denied, because if they are truly qualified to receive benefits, they will usually be approved for them eventually. Not everyone who applies for benefits will get approved. Some people are ultimately denied benefits even after appealing their case. Some applicants may have to hire an attorney who specializes in Social Security disability insurance to work on their case. These attorneys can be very helpful, but they can also be quite expensive. After applying for SSDI, one usually must wait several years before receiving any benefits. This waiting period can, in itself, create quite a hardship. If one is ultimately approved for the SSDI program, they'll also likely qualify for not only Medicare, but also Medicaid or Medi-Cal health insurance benefits. They may also receive Supplemental Security Income, SSI. This is a program designed to help those who are disabled and or over the age of 65 with very limited income. Then there is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Section 8 Housing Assistance Voucher Program. This program subsidizes the rent for those who have very low incomes and or disability. To apply for this program, applicants must first get on the Section 8 waiting list. This waiting list is only open when someone leaves the program or when funds are made available. This program has limited funding, so there's always more people who qualify for it than money available. But if you're patient and persistent, you may be able to get on the waiting list. Then you must usually wait several years before you are formally accepted into the program. At this point, you will then begin to receive your housing subsidy benefits. Unfortunately, most people that need help paying their rent usually cannot afford to wait the many years it often takes to become eligible for this program. If you are accepted into the Section 8 program, you will be required to pay between 30 and 40% of your income towards your rent. Any remaining income can be spent on other vital necessities such as food, transportation, medical expenses, utilities, etc. This program is a lifesaver for those fortunate enough to be accepted into it. These are just a few of the government-funded programs that may be available to the residents of the housing complex. These programs offer a wide array of benefits, which include medical care, prescription drug coverage, assistance in purchasing food, a source of income, and even housing subsidies. Most of the homeless at the complex will easily qualify for one or more of these government programs. Staff at the housing complex will work with each resident to make sure that they apply for every government program they are qualified for and begin to receive benefits as soon as possible. Chapter 6, Funding the Housing Complex and its Programs. Attempting to secure funding for the housing complex plan will take some creative and innovative thinking. The money to help fund this project may come from a variety of sources. One of the main sources of funding may come from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. This governmental agency has set aside funds to help established homeless housing complexes pay for their services. The staff at the housing complex will be sure to apply for a share of this money to help cover some of the expenses at the facility. In addition, local and state governments may have money set aside to help the homeless. The staff will apply for a share of these funds as well. With homeless people off the streets, local police agencies may be able to save some money. This is because they will not be responding to as many calls concerning the homeless. These savings could then be passed along to the housing complex to help fund its work. Local ambulance services and fire departments may also save some money because they'll no longer have to respond to as many homeless-related calls. These savings can also be used to help fund the complex. Local hospitals and medical clinics will also very likely save some money because of less homeless people utilizing their services. These savings could also be passed on to the housing complex. Local jails and state prisons could also see a reduction in arrests and incarcerations of homeless people, which may lead to savings. These savings could then be passed along to the housing complex to help pay for its services. And finally, philanthropic individuals may also be willing to donate money to the housing complex to help pay for a portion of its operating expenses. These are just a few of the potential funding sources that may be available. Other creative sources of funding will also be explored. Donations. The housing complex will work closely with local food banks, grocery stores, restaurants, and farmers, all of which may have excess food that they might be willing to donate to the facility. Grocery stores will be asked to donate such things as dented canned goods or perhaps produce that's too ripe to be sold, or any other food items that are still edible but may not be able to be sold at the store. These foods could then be used to help create some of the meals at the housing complex. Local restaurants who may have cooked too much food or do not want it to go to waste may be so kind as to donate it to the housing complex. Local farmers may have excess crops. They may want to donate some of them to the housing complex to help feed the residents. Local food banks may also have some extra food available that they may be able to donate to the housing facility. The local community could also be asked. They might be able to donate a few canned goods, perhaps some dry food to help feed the complex's residents. The head chef, working with the others in the kitchen, will think of creative ways of using this donated food to make delicious meals for the residents. These food donations will go a long way in helping to reduce the cost of food needed to feed the residents at the housing complex. Preparing the residents for their job interview. Residents who wish to seek employment opportunities outside the housing complex will need to be prepared for their job interview. This process begins with the residents learning to present themselves with confidence they'll need to land a job. Residents can build their confidence by practicing for their interview. They'll work closely with a staff member who is familiar with the interview process. The residents will also be given advice on how to dress for the interview and how to make a good first impression. They'll also learn how to greet their potential employer, as well as learning the importance of making good eye contact during the interview. Residents will also learn to ask appropriate questions, as well as get an idea how they might answer many of the questions that may be asked during their interview. They'll also learn how to write a resume and fill out a job application. Computers will also be made available to any of the residents that may wish to conduct a job search or to apply for work online. Volunteers. As mentioned previously, a great many of our medical staff will be made up of our volunteers. These volunteers will include physicians, counselors, nursing professionals, medical assistants, billing clerks, and many others. Plumbers, electricians, secretaries, receptionists, and any other skilled professionals with a little free time on their hands will also be graciously invited to help at the complex. Members of the local community will also be asked if they might be willing to offer their assistance at the housing complex. Volunteers will be needed to help pick up and deliver items such as food and clothing. Volunteers may just want to help by simply coming to the complex to talk with the residents and offer them some encouragement. There will always be a need for a wide variety of volunteers at the complex, and any help that may be offered will be greatly appreciated. Food budget. The housing complex will provide each of the residents with 3 nutritious meals each day. The food will be purchased in bulk, which will help lower the cost of the overall food budget. As mentioned previously, the complex will work with local food banks, restaurants, local growers, and grocery stores to help supply some of the food for the residents. The amount of money that will be spent on the food needed to feed the residents works out to approximately $3 a person per meal. Each resident will receive 3 meals per day, and there will be 80 people to feed at each meal. This means that there will be 240 meals served each day. The cost of serving 240 meals at $3 a meal is $720 a day. There'll be 1,680 meals served each week at a cost of $5,040. The cost to serve 7,700 meals each month will be approximately $22,000. This means that for the yearly food budget will be close to $262,000. Food budget savings using SNAP. As mentioned previously, the residents at the housing complex will likely qualify for SNAP benefits. SNAP is the government-sponsored supplemental food program for those with very low income. Each SNAP recipient usually receives $250 in assistance to buy food each month. If the residents sign up for SNAP benefits and are approved, they could then allow the housing complex to use these SNAP benefits to purchase the food that they would help feed the residents with. This would help to reduce the food budget immensely. For instance, if all 80 residents were to qualify for $250 in SNAP assistance each month collectively, they would receive a total of $20,000 a month. If this money were used to help pay for food to help feed the residents at the complex, it would reduce the food budget by a whopping $20,000 per month. So instead of the complex having to pay $22,000 for food each month, it would only cost $2,000 per month. Leasing a building. This plan requires the use of a commercial warehouse building to house the homeless. This building will need to be approximately 10,000 square feet in size. The quickest and most economical way to acquire a building of this size, short of buying it, would be to lease it. This lease could last for an extended time period, perhaps 10 or 20 years. The cost of leasing a 10,000 square foot building varies from city to city. It will cost most likely around $10,000 per month. This works out to about $120,000 a year. Looking at the budget. The overall yearly budget of the housing complex will be around $1 million. The cost of paying the staff for 1 year will be around $730,000. This leaves $270,000 in the yearly budget. The cost of food will be approximately $262,000, but with SNAP benefits for each of the residents totaling $240,000, the cost of food will be around $22,000. So, salaries and food total around $752,000. Take these costs from the $1 million budget, and that leaves $248,000. The cost to lease a 10,000 square foot warehouse building will be approximately $120,000 per year, which leaves $128,000 left in the budget for the year. Cost of renovating the commercial warehouse building. After leasing a commercial warehouse building, extensive renovations will need to be performed to get it ready to house the homeless residents. These renovations will include building a commercial kitchen along with shower facilities and bathrooms. The sleeping units will also need to be constructed along with the dining room and several separate meeting rooms. In addition, a series of storage lockers will also need to be constructed. The cost to build all these items is estimated at around $500,000. With only $128,000 left in the yearly budget, this means that the complex will need to take out a loan for $500,000. This loan will be paid back over a 20-year period. The interest on this loan will be approximately 5%. The interest payment on $500,000 loan would be approximately $25,000 a year. This loan were paid back over 20 years. The principal payment would also be around $25,000 a year. Together, the interest and principal payments would be approximately $50,000 a year for 20 years. The cost of the borrowing $500,000 would be approximately $50,000 a year for 20 years. This would leave approximately $78,000 for other operating expenses. Chapter 7. Evaluations of the housing complex. Once the housing complex has been built and is up and running for a specific period of time, a thorough evaluation will then be performed. This evaluation will be carefully analyzing the housing complex's overall performance. It will examine whether the housing project is doing what it was designed to do. It will look at the program services to see if they are being administered properly. In addition, this evaluation will ask the residents if they are satisfied with the way the complex is being operated. It will also ask them if the staff is doing a good job, while also asking them how things could be improved at the facility. It will also ask the residents if they are satisfied with the food, the accommodations, and services. In addition, it will look at how many homeless were able to get off the street and eventually transfer out of the complex and move into permanent housing. This evaluation will also examine whether the residents have been able to find work outside the complex. Every aspect of the housing complex will be scrutinized and evaluated, from the staff to the budgets to the menus, even the food being served. It will also evaluate whether any improvements can be made to the facility and or its operation. This evaluation process will be carried out to improve the way the housing complex is being run. This evaluation will also examine the management team and the rest of the staff members to see if they're performing their work efficiently and effectively. Another aspect of this evaluation will be to see if the job training programs are performing as they were designed and to see if they can be improved. The main goal of this evaluation is to find ways in which to improve the overall operation of the housing complex. This evaluation will be performed by an objective third party with no connection to the housing facility. Additional research concerning the housing complex. Any researchers who may be interested in learning more about homelessness will be invited to the housing complex. There they'll be able to see how it is set up and being run. Researchers looking for possible solutions to homelessness will be invited to the housing facility where they will see how it operates. Anyone who may be interested in studying a working homeless housing facility will be invited to examine the operation of this facility. After seeing the homeless housing complex and witnessing firsthand how it operates, they may want to build a similar type of project. This may be done in a different city, state, or perhaps even a different country. Seeing this facility in person may even give them some ideas on how to design future homeless housing projects. The goal is to introduce this concept for housing the homeless to as many people as possible. This way, those who may be interested in working to help solve the homelessness crisis will be able to come and see what is being done at this facility. The line in this book provides 80 homeless individuals with much needed housing and critical services. This plan does not claim to solve the problem of homelessness, but if this idea becomes a reality and these types of homeless housing units are built throughout the country, then a majority of the homeless will not only have a place to call home, but they will also have an opportunity to regain their hope, dignity, and self-respect. In addition, these homeless individuals will also have access to nutritious food and the services they so desperately need. If we decide to act, we will all reap the benefits and reward of knowing we did something to help house the homeless. The homeless are in desperate need of some real help, and they need help quickly. This plan may not be perfect, but it demonstrates that there is a practical way that we can help those most in need. If this idea works as planned and proves to be successful, it could then be easily scaled up. For instance, if 100 of these complexes were built, they could easily house 8,000 homeless individuals. 1,000 of these complexes could house 80,000. 5,000 of these complexes, if they were built, would create enough homes for 400,000 homeless individuals. This would drastically reduce the number of homeless living on the street. If we were to fund 5,000 of these complexes, it would cost approximately $5 billion per year. HUD currently sets aside over $3 billion per year to help the homeless, so perhaps a portion of these funds could be used to finance many more of these types of homeless housing complexes. Remember that at least 1/3 of the homeless are former soldiers, so it would seem only fair for the Department of Defense to help fund 1/3 of the cost of building these homeless housing complexes. The Veterans Administration could also help fund these projects. Local and state governments also have money set aside to help the homeless, so they could also help finance these homeless facilities. The plan outlined in this book should be looked at as a guide, a blueprint, or perhaps a map of how to get from one place to another. Not everything mentioned in this book necessarily needs to be incorporated into this housing complex. For instance, needle exchanges and permitting intravenous drug use on site are good ideas whose time has come, but these ideas should be seen more as suggestions and not as absolute necessities. This book was written as a conceptual idea, although it is also a plan that could be put in place as written. This plan could also be easily modified, adjusted, and used in different settings or in different other various unique situations. Another important point that should be made is that this book was written with the intention of helping to house primarily chronically homeless men. For those homeless women without children, this homeless housing plan could also be utilized. This could be accomplished by building a separate facility just for women. It is also well understood that women and children also make up a sizable portion of the homeless population, and they too desperately need assistance. For these women and children, perhaps traditional housing placements and more direct financial help would be more suitable for their situation. Thank you for your time.